everyone. First of all, I would like to say thanks for the opportunity who has given to me. I'm Deshanti Matan, English Education B 2018, and today I would like to present my proposal by a title The Implementation of the Word for Word Translation Method to Improve Students' Vocabulary. Chapter 1, Background. Vocabulary is a part of the English lesson. It is the first basic that we have to learn in learning English. Before we write, we need to vocabulary that we will put in our writing. Before speak, we have to be able to know what we will say. Then, to understand a meaning of a sentence, we have to have many vocabularies. Without having good and sufficient vocabulary, learners will be difficulty in understanding and comprehending words when they listen, speak, read, and write in English. It is related to Huda 2016 that say no one can learn a language without learning vocabulary. And based on Richards and Renandia 2002, vocabulary is a core component of language proficiency and provides much of the basis of how we learn, speak, listen, and write. Based on Cameron 2001, a person said to know a word if he can or she can recognize its meaning when he sees it. Based on Kufasi 1988, said because of their limited vocabulary, they cannot communicate their ideas transmitted to them. This is clear that vocabulary is the basic thing that we have to have in order we can write, pronounce, and understand words. Vocabulary is one of crucial aspects to support those skills. Therefore, to reduce the problem above, teachers are required to be able to improve students' vocabulary. There are various ways that be able to improve students' vocabulary. According to Beck et al. 2002, page 2, the best approach to vocabulary learning is that it should be robust, vigorous, strong, and powerful in effect. Smith and McCarthy in 1997, page 239, suggests that the best way to learn vocabulary is to add explicit vocabulary to the usual inferring activities in the second language classroom. Smith and McCarthy, 1997, page 245, argues that those students who were most successful in vocabulary learning used several vocabulary learning strategies. Based on Nur Hidayat 2016 about improving students' vocabulary achievement through word game, the result of the study showed that word game could help students to memorize vocabulary items easily, motivate students, and make them more interested in learning vocabulary. Uh, State on explained above, the researcher not found a research about using word-for-word translation method to increase students' vocabulary. So, the researcher interest to using word-for-word translation method to increase students' vocabulary. The researcher will be conduct the result at the study at Junior High School Wanpana. The researcher will conduct a research with a title The Implementation of the Word-for-Word Translation Method to Improve Students' Vocabulary. Next, problem identification. As stated in the background above, that most of students have low vocabulary. The research question as follows: does the implementation of word-for-word translation method can improve students' vocabulary? And second, how do the implementation of word-for-word translation method can improve students' vocabulary? The research focus The research focused on the implementation of word-for-word translation method to improve students' vocabulary. The researcher will implement this method through translation the text based on the books used by the teacher in the research occasion as a guidebook in teaching. Translating activities will be carried out per group and individual. The next is research objective. The objective of the research is to know, able or not, the implementation of word-for-word translation method improves students' vocabulary and how the implementation of word-for-word translation method can improve students' vocabulary. And the next is research benefit. The result of the research expected to be useful for students. The research hope that by implementation this method, it can improve students' vocabulary. And also, this research is expected to give information to the lecturer of English about how to increase students' vocabulary. And the last is for the future researcher, the research will benefit and help the future researchers as their guide. Chapter 2 Literature Review. The first is Previous Related Studies. There are several studies have been researched about the implementation of translation method to improve students' vocabulary. They are addressed in following section. The first is Guntur 2014 conducted classroom research or CAR under title Improving Students' Vocabulary Mastery by Using Grammar Translation Method of 8th grade students at St. Junior High School, Tugusari, Bangsal Sari, Jember in the 2000, 2013 until 2014 academic year. Based on his research study, he concluded that use of using grammar translation method is able to improve the 8th grade students' vocabulary mastery at Junior High School Tugusari Bangsal Sari in the 2013 dan and 2014 academic year. The researchers state that this research is useful as a reference to conduct a further research dealing with grammar translation method with another design, such as classroom action research to motivate the students in learning English by using grammar translation method. Next, by Nelson and Sri, 2016, about comparison between games and grammar translation methods in improving pupils' vocabulary achievement. Based on the research finding above, the researcher conclude that the vocabulary assessment of the pupil taught by using grammar translation method is higher compared to those taught by games. The researchers state that grammar translation method could help the pupils improve their English vocabulary by translating the words into their first language. Lin and Adi 2019 conducted class action research under title The Use of Translation Activity to Improve the Students' Vocabulary Mastery. In the end of the research concluded that using translation activity can improve students' vocabulary mastery. The writers state that translation activity is recommended as one strategy and way to teach English, especially for teaching and learning vocabulary. So, based on the previous studies above, the researchers conclude that no one of them have conducted the research about the implementation of the word-for-word translation to improve students' vocabulary. Next, theoretical framework. Translation is changing a meaning of word from a language into another language. According to Newmark, 1988, page 28 says that translation is rendering the meaning of a text into another language in the way that the author intended the text. Translation is important for all people, example, a student, translator, and other researchers who want to analyze a translation study. Besides that, translation also can help students to improve their vocabulary. Based on explanation above, this study focused on the implementation of the word-for-word translation method to improve students' vocabulary. The writer chose the word-for-word translation method by Newmarks. Based on Newmarks, a word-for-word translation method is in which the search language word order is preserved and the words translated single by their most common meanings out of context. And by word-for-word translation method activity can help students to improve their vocabulary because they will focus on the meaning of word. The researcher in this research will try to implementation word-for-word translation method to improve students' vocabulary that involves many variables in which teaching and learning. The first is teaching word for word translation method to student, and the second choosing text to translate, and the last is enter into translate activity. Next, the hypothesis. Based on the review of related literature, the researcher formulates the following hypothesis. The uh, Hypothesis 1 is the implementation of word-for-word translation method can improve students' vocabulary, and hypothesis 0 is the implementation of word-for-word translation method cannot improve students' vocabulary. Next, uh, chapter 3. The first is research method. This chapter deals with the description of research type and design, research schedule and location, population and sample, operational definition of variables, research procedure, research instrument, and data analysis. The first is research and design, research type and design. This research employed quantitative design, and the researcher used a pre-experimental method consists of the three classes. This class will give treatment by translate text based on students' translation ability. Before the researcher give a treatment, the researcher will grouping students into some groups. These groups will give pretest. After given the treatment, this group was given a post-test to find out their vocabulary. The second is research schedule and location. This research will conduct at Junior High School 1 Pana, Mamasa District, West Sulawesi Province. The research will conduct on September 2021. And the population and sample in this research is the population take all of students in junior high school one Pana, and the sample will take all of students in ninth grade of junior high school one Pana. Next is operational definition of variables. The variable in this research is text from the guidebook that used by English teacher in junior high school one Pana. And research procedures. The following research procedure in this research is the first pretest. The researcher scored individually the data of pretest from the students, and the second treatment. The process of treatments were followed. First, teacher define which one text that will translate, and next, teacher divide students into some groups, and next divide text for each groups, and the last teacher asks students to translate a text. And the next process is post activity. The teacher check the translate of students and give explanation about any mistakes in students' translation. And the next me- and uh, the next the next process is a post test. Post test given to all students to uh, to know about the improve of students' vocabulary. And the last is the research analyze the data. Next, research instrument. The instrument that used to collect data as followed: test, treatment, and post-test. And the last, data analysis technique. The data analysis technique in this research used quantitative data that used to analyze students' score of vocabulary assessment. The quantitative data collected and analyzed by computing the score of written vocabulary assessment given in each treatment. This data is expected to get satisfying result. Okay, I think that's all from my proposal. Thank you very much and good morning.